Hi, thanks for joining me for Going Deeper. And we're just taking a little segment of our shame series, and we're looking at shame and eating disorders, whether you eat too much or you eat too little. You know, it really does help if we will start to change some of the emotions that's behind the eating. Now, I believe that everybody, whether you eat too much or too little, you need to be involved in the most healthy things for everybody. For instance, a balanced diet of some kind. A lot of times when we have an eating problem, we'll get off on a tangent. We only eat this one thing or whatever. Well, you know, we need to do our best to get the best nutritious diet in us that we can. And then secondly, exercise, not excessive exercise, but we need it, and we need good sleep. And the healthier we are in this eating disorder resolution program, well, the easier it's going to be for us to eat well and to sleep well and to exercise in a really healthy way. But a lot of times when people have a problem with food, they start to shame themselves with messages. And of course, this could apply to a lot of different problems. But we take all of these things that we think should, very important word, should be different, should be better, and we start to dialogue with ourselves. And I got to tell you, I think it's really important what we say to ourselves. Words have meaning, and the meaning can translate into actions and attitudes that we carry with us, and we don't have to. For instance, I shouldn't feel so anxious around food. Now, that's a really common thought that a person with a problem might have. Boy, I shouldn't be like this. This shouldn't be a problem for me. I should just be like everybody else. Well, if we went back in your history, there are a lot of things that we might see that influence you and influenced you then that would cause that anxiety. Some people were raised in a family where you had to eat everything on your plate because there were people in China that would benefit by you eating it all from your plate. Versus what I say is that if we have food and we've purchased that food, we own that food, and it's not going to help anybody whether we eat it or don't eat it. It's my food. And if I want to eat half the food that I have before me because, quite frankly, maybe I piled up too much, then that's absolutely okay for me to do. But a lot of people, your food experience when you were young wasn't free of emotional baggage. Pressured to eat, or pressured to eat things you didn't like, or your whole life was out of control, but you could control what you put in your mouth. And so you used food kind of as a way to cope or deal with the big dilemma. I don't know what it is for you, but I have to tell you, if you're anxious about food, there's nothing really scary about food. But if I had your background, I bet I'd be scared to death. There'd be all sorts of anxiety. So to say that I shouldn't have it is one thing. To say this, you know, I think a lot of people would have this anxiety if they were raised the way I was or went through what I did and all we had to cope with was food. Now, I say, now what am I going to do about it? And, you know, to have a therapist walk through the anxiety with you. It's like if you're afraid of flying, there's only one way to get over it. Take some classes, then eventually you get on the plane. And then you go talk to the pilot, and you make that pilot a person. And you discover the pilot is a lot more interested in the plane not crashing than me. And then you trust the pilot versus just this airplane may crash. Well, an airplane might crash, but you got a pilot that prevents it from crashing. So the same thing, if I go to the pilot of my life, God, and I connect with God and I really truly believe He cares about me, maybe that motivates me a little bit more to not be so anxious about the world in general and start to do some healthy things. And, you know, really there's nothing healthier than to get into some kind of program where I'm sharing my progress or my stumbles, and I'm just not doing it all on my own strength. Another thing that I would tell myself when I was struggling was, this shouldn't be so hard. Well, you know, how hard should it be? Maybe the only thing that you've ever found to give you comfort when nobody else is there, is food. Well, it ought to be hard to give up the only source of comfort that you've ever had. Or maybe it's just sometimes it's the only source of comfort that you have. Sometimes we're so angry we eat at the people we're angry at. That happens. And so to say that it shouldn't be so hard, I disagree. I think it's one of the hardest things in the world. You know, when an alcoholic quits drinking, he doesn't have to go into a bar ever again. You've got to sit down and eat some food every day. And so it's not just like, okay, forget that. You have to do it in moderation, in a healthy way. And so it's hard. So give yourself a break. I think it's so hard, you can't do it by yourself. You know, the Bible says God will never give us anything that is beyond what we can do. But He didn't say alone. Alone is not at the end. And so when He says, hey, don't forget to get together with other people. Don't forsake the gathering of yourselves together, things like that. Then we need to be sure we're going to do that. That's how God can help us. Here's another one. It's my fault that I've developed this problem. Well, you know what? I don't know whose fault it is. In fact, I'm not going to waste 1 ounce of time on discovering whose fault it is. I can do that after I get out of the mess I'm in. So I start asking, how do I get out of this versus whose fault was it that I got into it? So I start to get out of it. And I start to have connection, healthy connections with healthy people. And my brain gets a little more balanced in the way it's looking at life. Well, then maybe I'll go back and see who was responsible or what were the influences or whatever. Or I might be so into a new life and the recovery process that I don't even care whose fault it was. I'm just living out a totally different life in recovery. And then, you know, I've got 2 more. One, I'm such a shallow person that I'm using food to cope with life. Maybe not. Maybe you're just the opposite. Maybe you feel things differently than other people and you're not shallow at all. In fact, you're so compassionate and you have so much empathy for other people. Maybe that's why you're using food to comfort yourself, and maybe with a little help, you're not going to end up with that dilemma. And then finally, I'm not even sick enough to have a problem. Well, that's kind of an interesting thing. You know, you go to the doctor, your lab works normal, your blood pressure's okay, and you walk away going, I'm doing great. No, you're not. Anytime we have an obsession of the mind that results in a compulsion of the body, it doesn't matter what the shape the body's in, it's not going to stay that way. We need to deal with the obsession of the mind. How does this happen? We say to God, God, I have tried, and I've tried really hard, and I haven't been able to do this. In and of myself, God, I have an extreme limitation when it comes to food. I can't help myself. Then you say this, God, you can. You can give me the power, you can give me the people, and you can give me the program that'll get me out of this once and for all. Then the third thing, okay, I'm going to let you do it. So first, I can't. God can. God, I'm going to start cooperating with you, and we're going to get over this. What a great thing that is. You bring other people around you, you work the steps or any kind of program, you see your progress, and little by little, you're restored to sanity versus the food insanity that, quote unquote, all of us get into when we have an eating problem. I hope the best for you, and I hope that you'll let God do a great work in you, that you'll find some people that can work with you. A counselor maybe is the beginning, or a recovery program. Whatever you do, don't not do nothing, as my wife would say. I'll see you next time. If you need some help, call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE.